moving right along. The CISQ report. The cost of poor software quality in the US, a 2022 report. I don't think they have a 2023 out. I couldn't find one, but the 2022 is damning enough. So let's just look at the summary, and then we'll dive into some of the points. At some point, I'm going to have to let the Twitch ads play. I apologize, but it's not right now. So we're going to get right into it. Let me just have a sip of coffee here. Thanks, chat, for being so active. I see you guys over there. Blue Spider Monkey, thank you for the follow 5 minutes ago. I appreciate it. All right. The key U.S. economic conditions that frame the context for this biennial report are a projected GDP for 2022 of $23.35 trillion, a roughly 2% rise since 2020, in an inflation rate of 15% over the 2-year period, a small 4% growth in the IT labor base over those 2 years to 1.51 trillion, and the number of unfilled IT jobs sits at around 300,000 as of the end of August. Now remember, this is 2022, so I would say a lot has changed since 2022. But even if you take, I think this is kind of like the issue. If you want to look at 2022 as like a year when we had lots of availability of developers, lots of money flowing through venture capitals and startups in the IT industry in general, and a general growth of the IT industry, which this indicates during that year, then what I would hope to see is that if my developer experience has also increased and it's never been better than ever, then we should also see an upward trend of goodness in the IT industry. What are we actually seeing? So you can see that the technical debt was approximately $1.52 trillion in principle only, by the way. There were cybersecurity failures, which I think the data goes into. There's operational failures, which make up approximately $1.81 trillion. There's finding and fixing defects. There's $607 billion. There's unsuccessful dev projects. There's $260 billion. And then there's legacy systems for about $520 billion. We're talking about billions and trillions of dollars going into... What the hell? Why do these things exist at such high numbers if everything is, fantastic in the industry? The three main problem areas that we will focus on this year are cybercrime losses due to existing software vulnerabilities jumping way up. Losses rose 64% from 2020 to 21. Those losses have not yet been determined for 2022. Several critical infrastructure attacks cost an unmeasurable amount of pain and suffering over the last 2 years, such as the Colonial pipeline. And this is something that nobody's comfortable to talk about. And that is what I really find a bit offensive are people who claim that the software industry has never been better, even though yes, there are problems, but it's never been better. Things have been... The time to get into learning things and building things is now. And yet the amount of pain and suffering that is caused tangentially to actual human beings in terms of actual physical pain. For example, entire states' 911 services going down because of a security issue or an issue with a deployment where some stupid thing got deployed that should never have been deployed. Nobody talks about that because God forbid that anybody wants to take responsibility for the fact that we cater to the lowest common denominator of developers, including in terms of security, the licensing stuff we just saw, complexity, all that stuff. And it actually has a real world impact on people's actual lives, not the digital ones and zeros where people get to hide behind their keyboards and not see the effects of the shit they produce. Software supply chain problems with underlying third-party components have risen significantly. In 2021, 77% of organizations reported an increase in the use of open source software. A medium-sized application, which is considered less than 1 million lines of code, carries 200 to 300 third-party components on average. And based on what we just saw with the open source statistics, I want you to guess how many of those components have licensing issues or security vulnerability issues which have not been fixed in the last, 2 to 10 fucking years. The number of failures due to weaknesses in the open source parts of a software supply chain increased by, holy shit, 650% between 2020 and 2021. That number almost sounds made up. The growing impact of technical debt has become the biggest obstacle to making any changes to existing code bases. Technical debt principal increased to $1.52 trillion. I believe that squiggly means approximately, because deficiencies are not getting fixed. In spite of a projected rate of 15% growth in computer IT positions created over the next decade, the number unfilled US IT jobs sat at about 300,000 at the end of August. It's probably not looking so hot today either. In late 2019, it was predicted that by 2025, 40% of IT budgets will be spent simply maintaining technical debt. And it's a primary reason that many modernization projects fail. But we have such great tools these days. Aren't our libraries and our frameworks and our automation tools just the bee's knees when it comes to creating software and code? It's fantastic. The number of weekly hours an average developer at a company spends on addressing technical debt is 13.5 out of 41.1, or approximately 33% of their time. So then they go and talk about quality, processes that are being implemented in terms of like what they're seeing with their studies, things like that. So yeah. So if we go down to, let's go have a look at, this is 2020. And because we're looking at 2022, we can actually see the comparison from 2020 to 2022. So for example, if we just take the big numbers, technical debt at 1.31 trillion and 2.08 trillion in 2020, and then we kind of go up here to 2022, it hasn't changed too much, but it has gone up. And even if we're talking about a change of like, let's say $500 billion, that's still $500 million. It's not getting better. And I would argue status quo isn't exactly an improvement. Let's go back down. Okay, so yada, yada, yada. Okay, so this was really, really good because they essentially summarized the biggest software failures between 2021 and 2022 to give you an insight into what the hell happened and what the impact of that was. SolarWinds. In the first 9 months of 2021, the Orion breach cost SolarWinds $40 million and soon escalated to $90 million, which then included incident response and forensic services for companies who were impacted by this incident and have cyber insurance coverage. By summer 2021, we learned that the SolarWinds attack cost affected companies an average of $12 million. Companies in the US reported an average of a 14% impact on their annual revenue. SolarWinds stock plummeted from 25 a share at the end of 2020 to a current price of about 9 a share. So then they go over who they are and what happened. A supply chain compromise of a dynamic link library was found at the heart of the vulnerability. SolarWinds reported that just over 18,000 of their clients downloaded an affected version, though not all were actively hacked. Approximately 100 known companies were impacted. So then they described the hack. The perpetrators added malicious code into one of the company's most used services, Orion. The hacking incident was stealthy and non-destructive, allowing it to slip under SolarWinds' radar and stay there for months. The code spread itself to other clients by hitching a ride on one of the regular software updates that SolarWinds sends out to its clients. There, the malicious code set up a backdoor for the hackers, allowing them to install even more invasive malware and spy on their targets and leak any information they deemed important. And you know what? The numbers that are being shown here. Like, for example, 14% impact on annual revenue. Where is it? $12 million $12 million per company in terms of cost. What I don't think this accounts for is this shit. The invasive malware and spy on targets and leaking of information deemed important. You almost cannot put a price on that. So if I had to make an argument for whether these numbers are correct, I would say that they are underserved, not correct, not overserved. These are just the numbers that can actually be tracked and quantified in some real manner. But the real numbers of this type of shit is way higher than is being actually reported. T-Mobile data breach. I remember that. Affects 50 million customers. On March 18, 2021, a bad actor illegally accessed and acquired personal data of more than 50 million customers. T-Mobile learned about the massive data breach on August 7, 2021. So then they got like dates of birth, addresses, phone numbers, driver's license, government ID, social security numbers, T-Mobile. How on earth are you going to put any price on the potential damage caused by getting data like this? The T-Mobile CEO apologized for the security breach, promised to beef up defenses. Many customers affected by the data breach have decided to take legal actions. The lawsuit alleges that T-Mobile's poor security protocols are to blame and allowed hackers to gain access to the company's services and extract the information. A vulnerable router was used to gain access to T-Mobile servers. Let me take a second because I heard a noise. Travis, holy crap, man! Thank you for the sub, man. I'm trying to focus on the software stuff here, so I appreciate it though, Travis. I'll give a shout out to Travis because if you're watching me, you should also be watching Travis Froman on Twitch and YouTube. He actually does fun stuff, not mind-numbing, boring stuff like I'm doing right now. Building a game engine called Kohi in Vulkan, in C, essentially, not essentially, in C, yeah, and it's pretty bonkers. So hey, Travis, Omicron, new chatter, hey, okay, so I'm gonna stay focused. So back to this. Let me check on my ads. I don't have ads anytime soon, so I'm gonna keep going. All right, TikTok glitch resets followers to 0 on May 3rd, 2021. Damn it, Axe. Hang on, sorry. Axe, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate it, man. How you doing, Axe? It's good to see you, buddy. I'm trying to stay focused here, but you guys are throwing subs my way. I can't ignore that, man. You guys are awesome. Travis, Axe, thank you, man. I just give a shout out to Travis, otherwise I'd give you a shout out, Axe. It's good to see you, man. And yes, Ghost Magic, if technical debt is growing over years, that by default means people are not putting enough time into debt. Yes. Okay, so staying focused because I don't have a lot of time and we need to get through this data. So this is the TikTok glitch. So TikTok users logged in to the app, and the last thing they expected to see was all of their users gone. So in particular, this particular glitch probably didn't have exactly a very big financial cost, but it is demonstrative of the kinds of glitches that exist even in big tech software, where something simple like this can be done. Colonial pipeline. Oh boy. And let's not get into the cost of the actual physical damage to people's livelihoods or physical well-being because of software abilities like this. And I'm going to say this again. I'm going to call out people who defend the current state of the industry as it's never been better, bro. Everything's great, bro. Maybe it's not perfect, bro, but we have the best ever, bro. Yeah, but when your shit fucks up shit like this, you don't even know how to count the cost of the actual impact on people's lives. And I think that we have to take responsibility for the fact that we have an immense amount of let's say power over people's lives with the shitty shit we shit out of our shitters and dump down the toilet because we're just too lazy or whatever the reasons are for our inability seemingly to create good quality crap. Even good quality crap would be better than what we do. So what was this thing? This attack disrupted nearly half of the fuel supply on the east coast of the United States. Nearly half of the fuel supply on the east coast of the U.S. It caused gasoline shortages in the southeast and a spike in fuel prices. So, Colonial Pipeline is the largest refined products pipeline in the U.S., a 5,500 mile or 8,851 kilometer for us Canadians, a system involved in transporting over 100 million gallons from the Texas city of Houston to New York Harbor. It carries 45% of the fuel consumed on the U.S. East Coast. On April 29, hackers gained access to Colonial Pipeline's network through a virtual private network account, which allowed employees to remotely access the company's network. The hackers obtained valid credentials that enabled them to breach Colonial Pipeline's network because the VPN account did not use multi-factor authentication. And I would argue that even if it did, that wouldn't even be like the best defense against this. After a week, on May 7, Colonial Pipeline received a ransom note demanding a cryptocurrency ransom be paid. Shortly after, the pipeline was shut down, delivering roughly 2.5 million barrels of fuel across the southeastern United States daily. The outage crippled fuel delivery. It resulted in long lines at gas stations, some of which ran out, and higher fuel prices. No duh. The hackers stole nearly 100 gigabytes of data and threatened to leak it if they didn't pay the ransom. Colonial Pipeline paid a ransom of 75 bitcoins, or approximately $5 million to the hackers, who are believed to be the cyber group known as DarkSide. The total cost of the underlying security vulnerabilities is incalculable. I want you to listen carefully. The total cost of the underlying security vulnerabilities is incalculable. The ransomware attack on Colonial Pipeline shows the extensive damage that insufficient security measures and system vulnerabilities can cause. The attack began when a hacker group identified as DarkSide accessed the Colonial Pipeline network. The attackers stole 100 gigabytes of data within a 2-hour window. Following the data theft, the attackers infected the Colonial Pipeline IT network with ransomware that affected many computer systems, including billing and accounting. Colonial Pipeline had to shut down the pipeline systems to prevent the spread of the ransomware. Once they paid the DarkSide hackers to get the decryption key, they were able to restart their systems. The root cause appears to be a stolen password to Colonial's VPN. Twitter. A vulnerability in Twitter software exposed an undermined number of owners of anonymous accounts to potential identity compromise over the last year. It was reported that data on 5.4 million users were offered for sale online. How do you put a price on that? How do you put a price on the cost of such a hack? Data obtained from the exploitation of that vulnerability was being sold in a popular hacking forum for $30,000. The vulnerability allowed someone to determine during login whether a particular phone number or email address was tied to an existing Twitter account, thereby revealing the account owners. A security researcher discovered the flaw in January, informed Twitter, and was paid a reported $5,000 bounty, which is it's a fart in the wind. The bug was introduced in June 2021 software update and was fixed. The revelation of the breach came while Twitter was in a legal battle with Tesla CEO Elon Musk over his attempt to back out from his previous offer to buy San Francisco-based Twitter for $44 billion. The breach is especially worrisome because many Twitter account owners, including human rights activists, do not disclose their identities in their profiles for security reasons that include fear of prosecutor by repressive authorities. Regardless of your political stance on any of the shit surrounded to Twitter or Elon Musk or human rights activists or activism in general or whatever the heck ever, it doesn't matter. Imagine it's you. How do you put a price on the information that was taken from you and sold and potentially used? The Facebook ranking bug. A group of Facebook engineers identified a massive ranking failure that exposed as much as half of all newsfeed views to potential integrity risks. The issue was noticed in October 2021 when a sudden surge of misinformation began flowing through the newsfeed. Facebook's downranking system failed to properly demote probable nudity, violence, and even Russian state media. The issue was internally designated a Level 1 SAV, a label reserved for high-priority technical crises. Unable to find the root cause, the software engineers watched the surge subside a few weeks later and then flare up repeatedly until the ranking issue was finally fixed on March 11th, 2022. The damage to Facebook's reputation for moderate controversial content was incalculable. The technical vulnerability was apparently introduced in 2019, but didn't create a noticeable impact until 2021. In a large, complex system like this, bugs are inevitable and understandable. What happens when a powerful social media platform has one of these faults? How would users even know? Okay, I'm going to take a break because the Twitch ads are forcing me to. So I'm going to hit those Twitch ads and get them out of the way. And jump back to chat. Hello, chat. I am sorry. if you are getting the ads. I hope you guys are. Yeah, it is a heated stream, Max. Yeah. So far, the TikTok and Facebook issues are the only non-security cause bugs. Yeah, right. But what they did do is they caused security problems, if that makes sense. Like in terms of security integrity. So they're bugs that weren't caused by like some kind of security based vulnerability, but they had security kind of impacts, if that kind of makes sense. And yeah, it is a heated stream today because this is one of this stream in particular. I've had it, I planned out my data and the things I need to go over. And this stream in particular was the one that gets me the most because I am just boggled by anybody who makes a defense that things are okay. Maybe not great, but things are okay, and they've never been better in the IT industry in general. Hardware, software, code quality, tools, developer experience, ability to get features out. So many people get on and say and defend it. And I've been holding on to these stats for this stream, trying not to show my card too much because I want to make this into like material that people can actually like follow along and use on my Enlightened programming website. But this kind of stuff frankly, it pisses me off because you cannot look at the market. You can't look at market factors in terms of financial costs. You can't look at security vulnerabilities such as we've looked at so far. And you can see in terms of number of tabs on my Chrome browser, we're not halfway through and I'm trying to rush through it. And you can't look at customer satisfaction rates and say that things are okay. It might feel okay. You as a developer might feel all nice. Ooh, look what I can do with insert thing here. But what you're producing is shit. And everything is telling you it's shit. And you're sticking your head in the sand and going, no, it's not. I felt good doing it. What the hell are these arguments? See my comment above regarding stuff being hackable. If it's software controlled, it's hackable. Just saying. There are some things that just shouldn't be software controlled. Correct, Travis. Yes. And this is the thing, is that there's a misapplication of not just like there's a misapplication of not just things in software, but when you even use software, period. For example, we have so much capability in hardware that does not need to be in software, Travis, to your point. And yet we choose to offload such shitty, stupid crap to software. Anyways, Axe, not in the industry, but the problems you talk about are horrendous and not talked enough. You have every right to be heated. I appreciate it, Axe. I appreciate it. I feel like I have a right. It's nice to hear that, like, I'm not the only one who feels this way, but I think so many people wouldn't agree with me, which boggles me. At the very least, not like the people who are vocal. The people who are vocal to me do not agree with me. They think it's either, middle of the road or better than it ever was. Problem is that those of us who care about this stuff are the minority. I agree with that. Yep. This is why we're never going to be considered real engineers. Yeah, it works, bro. Good enough. That's right. It works. It's good enough. I made my exit money, if depending on your perspective on like where you are in an organizational structure. I got my investment money as open source, as an open source producer, which does happen. It's been known to happen. What else? I get to get my paycheck, and it worked. It works. So I get my paycheck, right? So what's the problem? Right? What's the big deal? Everything's working just fine. I had a good experience. Things were good for me. But it's not all about you, bro. Okay, let's keep going. Tesla had to recall almost 12,000 vehicles. It was a glitch in the beta software. So it was in the emergency brake system, which is just like, what the hell? Tesla discovered a communication error in the 10.3 full self-driving beta software. So this doesn't say much about it. There's Grand Theft Auto. There's Grand Theft Auto, boys. What promised to be a high-quality remaster of the Grand Theft Auto classics, GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, turned out to be a low-quality game full of bugs, glitches, and poor design decisions. Now, this is why this is such a key critical report, even though it's large and we're barely halfway through it, because it brings in things like this. Video games are affected by this. Video games have also gone to shit because the underlying mechanism with video games is shitty software produced by programmers who don't give a shit. When the game was released in November 2021, the reception and also managerial and executive and company, okay? It's not just developers. When the game was released in November 2021, the reception from fans was far from great, and Rockstar Games received a lot of backlash. Some users even went as far as to ask for a refund. Why? Because the quality was bad. Really, really bad. The NPC graphics were terrible. The character models were blotchy. The frame rate consistently dropped. The rain effects made it difficult to see. Missions and minigames did not work as intended, and the audio quality was appalling. All these issues together made the game almost unplayable. The cost of the company's reputation has not been calculated. I agree. How do you calculate that shit? And it ever since 2021, can you honestly tell me that this has been a trend that has been decreasing? Do you think this trend has been decreasing? Can you think of any games, say, oh, I don't know, in the last 3 months maybe? How about the last 6 months? How about the last year that have suffered from exactly this same thing? Concord. The video game publisher has since uncovered and apparently fixed a long list of software bugs. Nevertheless, the damage was done, and it will take a long time for the publisher to recover from this blunder. Now, let's just assume for a moment that every single developer was really, really freaking cared about what they were doing, and it was just bad decision making on managers and executives' fault. Why would we not care about the developers inside of that game studio? Because those developers could have been you or me. And when you or me go, oh, well, good enough, bro. It works, bro. That could be you on the receiving end of in-shitified software, which means you lose your job and become quite unemployable in the industry in some cases. So when you're looking at things like this and going, well, it works, it's good enough, bro, what you're really doing is hurting yourself. Sometimes indirectly, sometimes directly. And if you're not hurting yourself, then you're hurting everybody else in the room around you. So I want you to think about that the next time you're like, good enough, bro. Software's good enough, bro. Log4j software bug leaves millions of web servers vulnerable. I remember this one. The Log4j software bug set the internet on fire after it left millions of web servers vulnerable to hackers. The vulnerability was first discovered in the beginning of December 2021, and its impacts have carried over into 2022 and are still being felt today. What makes this bug so terrifying is the fact that Log4j, an open source logging library, is used by many companies worldwide, including high-profile organizations like Apple, Amazon, CISQ, IBM, Microsoft, and many more. I don't know, they just basically run half the things in your lives, if not more. Many parties, companies, clients, and users alike are very worried. The Log4j software is used to record all activities happening in a wide range of systems, such as errors and routine system operations, and deliver diagnostic messages to system admins and users. The most common example of Log4j at work is the 404 error message that everyone is familiar with. Hackers can exploit these diagnostics to scan for vulnerable systems, to install malware, steal credentials, and gain confidential data. Again, tell me how you put a price on that shit. Due to the extent of damage it could potentially cause, many believe that the Log4j software bug is the worst vulnerability in years. Hackers are using it to trick victims into mining small amounts of cryptocurrency for them and to hack private Minecraft servers. It's a combination of a new vulnerability being simultaneously widespread and easy to exploit. The Netherlands National Cybersecurity Center has identified hundreds of common software applications that are vulnerable to the flaw if not updated, and a number that maybe not have a patch yet available. In a blog post, Microsoft said it has observed China, Iran, North Korea, and Turkey exploiting it. And this is yet another reason that I wanted to bring up this study. Can everybody open their fucking eyes for a moment and just imagine that we have state actors and governments and nations that do not like us over here? Because it's true. There are some that don't. And what they're going to do is they're going to lean on the fact that you don't give a shit about your code, and they're going to take it to their advantage as much as they can. And if that means they have to fuck over the lives of you and your families, that's exactly what they're going to fucking do. While you sit there and go, oh, but everything's good, bro. It's never been better, bro. Efforts are being made to fix the issue called Log4Shell. Teams around the world are working hard to patch affected systems before hackers can exploit them, while organizations are urged to install the latest security updates in order to counter the threat as soon as possible. While sweeping through their networks and applying a patch might be a solution for now, many companies are still left vulnerable, and this solution may still not be enough. Only time will tell. Log4j is the most prominent incident which has contributed to last year's 650% year-on-year increase in open source software supply chain targeted attacks. Wintermute, September 2022. Hackers stole digital assets worth around $160 million from crypto trading firm Wintermute. The hack involved a series of unauthorized transactions that transferred USD Coin, Binance, USD Tether, USD Wrapper ETH, and 66 other cryptocurrencies to the attacker's wallet. According to a May 2022 report from Bishop, Fox security incidents pummeling DeFi platforms resulted in losses to the tune of, how about $1.8 billion in 2021 alone? With the services experiencing an average of 5 hacks per month. To make matters worse, malicious actors have stolen $1.3 billion worth of cryptocurrency in the first 3 months of 2022 alone, in comparison to $3.2 billion that was stolen for the entirety of 2021, indicating a meteoric rise in crypto crimes. Meteoric! It's like the FF7 summon. It's the FF summon of crypto hack. The attack targeted the decentralized finance DeFi space. The OSS package implicated is Profanity, an Ethereum vanity address generation tool, where recently it was disclosed that a vulnerability could be abused to recompute the private wallet keys and addresses created using the utility. SpiderPython IDE. Originally disclosed in August 2007, the bug has to do with how a specially crafted target archive can be leveraged to overwrite arbitrary files on a target machine simply upon opening the file. As many as 350,000 open source projects are believed to be vulnerable to exploitation as a result of a security flaw in a Python module that has remained unpatched for 15 motherfucking years. The open source repositories span a number of industry verticals, such as software development, artificial intelligence, machine learning, web development, media, security, and IT management. Again, how do you put a price on that? Tell me how you're going to quantify a cost on what this costs to you, to me, to GDP, to whatever the fuck ever. BNBJ in August 2022. It's a blockchain linked to the Binance cryptocurrency exchange, which stands for Build and Build, formerly called Binance, is the blockchain gas token that fuels transactions, as noted earlier this year. In August, it was reported that an estimated $2 billion worth of cryptocurrency had been stolen in 13 cross-chain bridge attacks, accounting for 69% of total crypto funds stolen in 2022 so far, as of the report. And then there's a few other reports in the incidents. Git, August 2022, because why the fuck not? Git is a hugely popular open source version control system, counting more than 80 million active users. In August, a vulnerability in the open source development tool Git, which if not addressed allows bad actors the keys to the kingdom. In total, 332,000 websites were found as potentially vulnerable, including 2,500 residing on the .gov domain. Including 2,500 residing on government domains, which potentially, even if a fraction of them contain personal data about citizens of a country, holy shit. GitHub users are being targeted with malicious copies of legitimate repositories. GitHub users are being targeted with malicious copies of legitimate repositories. 2022. while the majority of malicious code changes were made in the last couple of months, with some found to be dating back 7 years. As reported by GitHub, a threat actor managed to steal data from dozens of victims. OpenLightspeed is the open source edition of Lightspeed. I jumped over to the next one. I apologize. OSS technology has always had the potential for flaws, being rooted in publicly accessible code. This type of vulnerability on such a popular platform can have serious consequences for affected firms, including, NPM install whatever the fuck ever, because who the fuck cares, because my tooling makes me feel so good inside. More recently, the repo jacking bug was discovered that could allow an attacker to take control over a GitHub repository and potentially infect all applications and other code relying on it with malware. OpenLightspeed. It's the open source edition of Lightspeed web server, the 6th most popular web server, accounting for 1.9 million unique servers across the world. Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 said that multiple high-severity flaws have been uncovered in the OSS code that could be weaponized to achieve remote code execution. And these are the three. All of them, two of them are high severity. One is medium severity. So, if you're running a web server, get fucked. FTX crypto hack. Okay, I've heard enough about crypto. Common Spirit Health. You think your healthcare systems are left untouched? No. A crippling ransomware attack on the second largest U.S. nonprofit health system is showing what happens when critical healthcare infrastructure goes down. The attack on Common Spirit Health, which has 142 hospitals in 21 states, left IT locked, delayed surgeries, and caused widespread disruptions in patient care. It also left millions of patients waiting at least 2 weeks to learn if their personal information was compromised. And I would say that the least of your worries is whether or not your personal information got compromised. How about whether the fuck or not you're going to get a fucking surgery, and maybe your life depends on it? Oh, but the developer experience these days has never been better. My warm and fuzzy, bro. Oh, I feel so warm and fuzzy creating my shit-ass code. Now, there are some other ones that they couldn't cover, particularly 4 of them, and that's just in 2022. The top software weaknesses of 2021 and 2022 identified. All of the software failure stories presented in the previous table are due to weaknesses found in the software of those systems. Software weaknesses are flaws, bugs, vulnerabilities, or various other types of deficiencies found in a software solution's code, architecture, implementation, or design, probably found in a software solution. They potentially expose the system containing that software to failures and or cyber attacks. MITRE, which is essentially CVE, it's essentially more or less this guy. It's based off of data. Like, this data is based off of CVE, which is essentially MITRE. They recently shared their top 25 most common and dangerous weaknesses impacting software over the previous 2 calendar years. These are considered the most dangerous because they're usually easy to discover, come with a high impact, and are prevalent in software released during the last 2 years. To create this list, MITRE scored each known weakness from its CW database based on its prevalence and severity after analyzing the data for 37,000 plus CVEs from NIST's National Vulnerability Database. Now, I did go and look at NVD and I did go and look at CISA because they do contain more data, but the data around these things are much harder to kind of parse out, and I might end up doing that as an additional extra for the paid version on enlightenedprogramming.com. The CVE MITRE stuff is much easier to parse and break down, so just accept things are going to shit. Source, trust me, bro. Although these weaknesses have been applied primarily to the quality aspect of security, we assert that they more generally apply to software quality. The table below provides insight into the top 25 most critical and current weaknesses. Let's go. Out of bounds right. CWE 787. Improper neutralization of input during web page generation or cross-site scripting. Improper neutralization of special elements used in a squeal command. We're talking in 2022, and the top 3 are probably some of the most easily discovered and easily solved bugs, and they're in the top motherfucking 3 spots of security issues. Oh, but my developer experience gives me the warm and fuzzies, bro. Oh, but when I write my shitty code, bro, I feel so good, bro. It's never been better, bro. Okay, then we keep going. Improper input validation. Again, out of bounds read, which is not the same as write, but essentially right up there. Improper neutralization of special elements used in an OS command. Use after free. Improper limitation of a path name to a restricted directory. Oh, and by the way, just to go back up to the top 3, I forgot to mention that typically the most junior developer who's asked to look at like what are some of the most common things that you should look at when you're like plugging security holes in your application, at least 2 of these are in the top, like the first things you're going to learn as a junior dev. So even junior devs know that this shit needs to get plugged, and it's still in the top 3. So what the fuck are we doing? I have no idea. Cross-site request forgery, unrestricted upload of file with dangerous type, null pointer dereference, deserialization of untrusted data, integer overflow or wraparound. That's probably more or less related to not so much web, but like, back-end software types of things. Improper authentication, use of hard-coded credentials. It's number 15. Use of hard-coded credentials is motherfucking 15. What the hell? Missing authorization, improper neutralization of special elements used in a command injection, missing authentication for a critical function. Tell me how that's number 18. How on God's green earth do you not know that you're missing authentication for a critical function? Tell me how that skirts, but you got the warm and fuzzies building that shit. Improper restriction of operation within the bounds of a memory buffer, incorrect default permissions, server-side request forgery, concurrent execution using shared resources with improper synchronization, which is a race condition, uncontrolled resource consumption, improper restriction of XML external entity reference, and improper control of generation of code injection. Now, I believe I looked up from the CVE data whether these things have changed in 2024, and for the most part, they haven't, because you can look at the numbers right now, and in 2024, things are still not looking so hot. You would think after 2 years, especially with the huge growth of developers who should be learning the basics of security fundamentals with this shit, and the huge influx of income from venture capitalists and the amount of money that came in during the 2021 plus era, that we would have made some kind of improvement. And aren't developer tools much better? How about automation? We have Dependabot. Doesn't Dependabot, nag at you when you have security vulnerability issues like that? But I'll tell you, in the future study, I don't think I have it on this one, but when I get to developer experience, you know what happens in terms of developer experience with automated security nagging report systems? Most developers don't give a flying fuck about them. They ignore them. You know why? Because they're usually in a time crunch, or they just don't fucking care about what they're building. So they literally ignore the security issues that are nagging them. And so we get shit like this year over year getting worse and worse and worse. But everybody gets the warm and fuzzy feelings doing it. Many professionals who deal with software will find the CW Top 25 a practical and convenient resource to help them mitigate their software quality risk. Apparently not. In April 2022, in partnership with the FBI and the NSA, cybersecurity authorities worldwide published their list of the top 15 most exploited security flaws, with links to the National Vulnerability Database entries and associated malware. Log4Shell, we talked about that. Zoho Management AD Self-Service A+. So AD usually has to do, anything AD typically has to do with Access Directory, I believe, which is usually permissions around users who can access particular things. Microsoft Exchange Server, elevation of privilege. So we're talking about access to critical infrastructure. Microsoft Exchange Server RCE, I can't remember what that is. Microsoft Exchange Server security feature bypass, so on and so forth with proxy shell, proxy logon. It keeps going. Atlassian, VMware, Microsoft NetLogin, Microsoft Exchange Server again, Pulse Secure, and Fortinet. The rising cost of cybercrime. Cybercrime is predicted to cost the world $7 trillion USD in 2022. According to Cybersecurity Ventures. If it were measured as a country, I want you to really, if you're watching this now or in the future, like later on, going back through the live stream or watching it on like my Enlightened programming course or whatever, I want you to listen. Just open your ears for just a second. I want you to listen. If it were measured as a country, then cybercrime would be the world's third largest economy after the US and China in 2022. Cybercrime alone. Who do you think pays for the cost of cybercrime? Do you think it's venture capitalists? Do you think it's the executives? Do you think maybe it's the taxpayers? Do you think maybe it's the developers who spend long nights and who give a shit and who make sacrifices? Do you think maybe it's them? The number of cybercrime instances and the related costs have been on the rise for over a decade. I don't think I can make this any bigger. I want to shove this in your eyeballs. I want you to look at this. This is like climate change times the Bible times 9/11. All the worst parts of the Bible. This is absolute insanity. This data is based only on the incidents that have been reported to the FBI, which of course is much less than the total picture of all US cybercrimes. The total costs associated with cyber attacks, lawsuits, insurance rate hikes, criminal investigations, and bad press can put a company out of business quickly. And then they go over some headlines. According to VMware's The State of Incident Response 2021, which you're welcome to go get the report, which I did, 82% of surveyed organizations are concerned that their company is vulnerable to a cyber attack. The report found that 49% of organizations lack the expertise and tools for adequate incident response. The FBI Cyber's Most Wanted list features more than 70 individuals and groups that have conspired to commit the most damaging crimes against the U.S. These crimes include computer intrusions, wire fraud, identity theft, espionage, theft of trade secrets, and many other offenses. And by the way, do you think these are just internal? Do you think these are just domestic U.S. cybercrime individuals? No. We're talking again about people who actually want to leverage the fact that developers and managerial staff and executive people and companies in general, particularly in North America, just are so complacent about what they're producing that they just don't give a shit about this. And these guys are sitting there rubbing their hands going, yeah, you keep getting those warm and fuzzies and we'll just take all the stuff and fuck you over. VPNs are, and by the way, they do it raw. They don't even give you lube. Straight up the urethra. VPNs are especially vulnerable since 6 Chinese companies own 30% of VPNs, which was mind-boggling to me. And 97 of the top VPNs are run by 23 parent companies, many of which are based in countries with lax privacy laws. Organizations are conducting more application security testing scans than ever before, according to the Veracode State of Security V12 report. Again, a report that I grabbed. You can go grab it yourself. Some very interesting things there. I might include it as an extra in the Enlightened programming version of this. In 2021, most firms were scanning applications approximately 3 times a week, up from 3 times a year in 2010. You know what? That's good. But it's also bad, right? It's good because you're scanning your applications up to 3 times a week. That's good. I'm glad that we're doing more scans. That's bad because something is requiring that. Security attacks increased 31% from 2020 to 2021, according to Accenture's State of Cybersecurity Resilience 2021 report. Again, another report you can go get. The number of attacks per company increased from 206 to 270 year over year. According to Debricked, on average, it takes over 800 days to discover a security flaw in OSS. 800 days. That is more than 2 years. To discover a security flaw in open source. For instance, the Log4Shell vulnerability was undiscovered for 2,649 days. How many people do you think used Log4Shell or Log4j and had this thing running for years on end and had it utilized against them and didn't even know? How do you put a cost on that? Similar reports have been published as well, so here are a few. Cyber criminals can penetrate 93% of company networks. Software supply chain attacks hit 3 out of 5 companies in 2021. 82% of CIOs believe their software supply chains are vulnerable. Businesses suffered 50% more cyber attack attempts per week in 2021. Ransomware attacks and ransom payments are rampant among critical infrastructure organizations. Ransomware trend statistics and facts in 2022 from TechTarget. You can go look this up too. I might include this in a future free stream. I just caught out of the corner of my eye Vancouver. Sorry, chat, I'm trying to focus and ignore, but Vancouver, these are undiscovered, not undisclosed, undiscovered, as in nobody says anything if they did discover them. But you can't really count that, right? It's really hard. How do you get somebody to say, well, I knew about it, I just didn't disclose it in time? But what ends up happening is that you have to assume that it's undiscovered because it's been undisclosed. So maybe somebody did know about it. So for example, through logical entailment, what you have to remember is that probably somebody knew about it because they used it. Right? They used it in a nefarious way. So that would be considered undisclosed. Someone knew, someone used, they didn't disclose, therefore undisclosed. But how do you count that? How do you quantify that? How do you put a number on that? So therefore it must go under the undiscovered bucket more often than not. So what percentage of people knew about something and didn't say anything versus just straight up just didn't know it was there? I don't think it actually matters in the long run. I think both are equally as bad. And it's probably more so the case that these things go undiscovered. Very few people know about them and report them because they are the nefarious actors who use them. The hottest cybercrime trends in 21 and 22 were ransomware, cryptojacking, deepfakes, video conferencing attacks, IoT and OT attacks, supply chain and OSS attacks, extended detection and response solutions, XDR, critical infrastructure attacks. So, the average downtime due to ransomware attacks, 21 days. Average day it takes a business to fully recover from an attack, almost a year, the better part of a year. Victims paid in ransom in 2020, a 311% increase over the prior year, $350 million. The average payment in 2020, a 171% increase compared to 2019. In 2020, nearly 2,400 US-based government healthcare facilities and schools were victims of ransomware. More recently, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency reported in February 2022 that it is aware of ransomware incidents against 14 of the 16 US critical infrastructure sectors. What do you think critical infrastructure is? What do you think critical infrastructure is in the United States? And imagine which 14 of the 16 had ransomware incidents. And then imagine what the possible cost of that could be. And then take a small fraction of that, let's be charitable, and take a small fraction of that and lay it at the blame of complacency in software and web. Another good way to see how quickly cybercrime has become a major problem is by the amount of money that various organizations will pour into that area. For example, last year, Google committed $10 billion over 5 years to fund a program to strengthen cybersecurity, including expanding zero trust programs, helping secure the software supply chain, and enhancing open source security. The Biden administration requested $2.1 billion in the 2022 discretionary budget for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That is an increase of $110 million from the 2021 level and builds on the $650 million provided for CISA and the American Rescue Plan. The money would go to enhancing its cybersecurity tools, hiring experts, obtaining support services to protect and defend federal technology systems, creating a cyber response and recovery fund, and so on. Software supply chain. So this one will hit more closer to home. So for anybody who has like say npm install, you're using React, Vue, Svelte, whatever it is, you're using some kind of JavaScript library, you're using Python, you're pulling in libraries, you're using Rust with a package manager, even other things like Zig has like a form of modules and whatnot, things like that. It could be anything where you're kind of like dependent on external things that you're pulling in. PHP and Laravel, for example, Composer, right? You pull in a bunch of stuff. What are you pulling in? So that's considered the software supply chain with regards to open source systems. You're just pulling in stuff and insert whatever happens next here. So it's composed of the components, libraries, tools, data, and processes used to develop, build, publish, and evolve a software system. So that includes, so it's not just limited to the libraries, say in NPM. It also includes things like CI/CD pipelines. It also includes things like, I don't know, you could say like Babel, I guess, would be something, Webpack, things that like do compilations, like compilers, or build tools, like SAS stuff, things like that. You could think of things like not necessarily Forge itself, but when Forge pulls in things in order to like deploy Laravel systems. You could think of like AWS systems when you like spin up a Lambda and you want to use Python, and then that Python thing pulls in a bunch of stuff that makes your Python code work in the Lambda. When you're using Terraform in order to do your infrastructure, DevOps, sysadmin, I mean, you name it. Software builders often create their products in large by assembling open source, third-party, and commercial software components. This way of building sorry, I lost my place. This way of building software allows rapid feature development and massive reuse of existing code, but opens the door to supply chain vulnerabilities. Open source software plays a critical role in today's IT ecosystem. The overwhelming majority of modern code bases contain open source components, with open source often comprising 70% or more of the overall code. And that's why I went through the statistics, I believe it was up here, about the open source stuff. So we can see we already went over this. We know exactly, in terms of like 1,000 studied systems, we know how they're affected by vulnerabilities, open source, licensing issues, things like that, right? According to CAS Software, a medium-sized application, which is less than 1 million lines of code, carries 200 to 300 third-party components on average. The top 4 reasons cited for using OSS are access to innovations and latest technologies, no license cost, overall cost reduction to modernize technology stack, functionality to improve deployment velocity. The warm and fuzzies of OSS, right? In 2021, according to Perforce, 77% of organizations reported an increase in the use of open source software, with 36% indicating a significant increase. Only 1.6% of over 2,000 respondents indicated that they reduced the use of open source software. Yet, only 13% are concerned that their OSS is unsecured or untested, whereas 27.5% have no reservations in using OSS, and you should have many reservations using OSS. OSS is great, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of developers who slave really hard. Like literally, they what's the saying? You sweat blood and tears. There are so many developers in open source who care so much about what they're doing. The issue is that there are more people who don't give a shit than there are people who do. And if you see that in open source, you definitely see it in closed source. There would appear to be a disconnect between the risks these organizations are taking relative to the actual risks of using certain OSS components. According to a recent IDC survey report, 86% of respondents said they sometimes or always try to find open source options over other kinds of software. Of course, why wouldn't you? However, most organizations are unaware of the extent to which they already use open source and underestimate their dependency on it, a dependency that comes with some risks. Now, I'm going to stop here because this part in particular stood out to me. So I just finished saying that there are plenty of people in the open source community who really, really care about the code they're producing in open source. There are plenty of them, and they should be, they should get some kind of medal, especially, the way that the IT industry is right now. But here's what this does to those people. You could look at this one of two ways. You could look at it as, oh, but so then what are you saying? That these people who, really care about their open source software are still produce crap? Sure, that's one way of looking at it. Here's another way of looking at it. You don't give a shit about their work. So, if anything, what you're saying is, I don't really care how much time and effort you put into it. I'm not even going to look at whether I have a huge issue that I'm bringing in with 200 or 300 dependencies. I don't care. I don't care about your work, just the same as I don't care about the work of somebody who doesn't give a shit about their code. It's actually offensive to the people who care. That's another way of looking at it. IDC research found that 68% of organizations that use any kind of open source software acknowledged that they had been impacted by a vulnerability or compromise associated with an open source tech over the past 2 years. Threats from open source vulnerabilities impact net new applications that enterprises are building, critical legacy applications, and software offered by suppliers. And these are the things that give you the warm and fuzzies. They comprise the components of the things that give you that warm and fuzzy feeling when you hit React compile or TSX compile or whatever the fuck ever compile my front end, because I'm in insane Stockholm syndrome thinking that this is a great way to feel and I'm in love with my build process. The mass reuse of open source components and libraries has dramatically accelerated the development cycle and the ability to deliver functionality according to customer expectations. No shit, Sherlock. But the counterpart to this gain has been a loss of control over the origin of the code that goes into a production system. The chain of dependencies exposes organizations and their customers to vulnerabilities introduced by changes that are outside of their direct control. The number of attacks using the open source ecosystem as a propagation vector reaching software supply chains increased by 650% by 2020 and 2021. The European Cybersecurity Agency predicted that supply chain attacks will increase fourfold by 2022. Other experts have predicted even higher. What do you think? You think it's gotten better? Would you say in 2024 it's gotten better? These pre-existing vulnerabilities can enable an attack that targets the less reliable components of a system's supply chain. This can trigger a failure that creates a chain reaction that propagates to a network of providers and then spreads through the internet to many other interconnected systems. These attacks are targeting the source code of the components of these software systems. So then they go back into SolarWinds, they go into Log4Shell, and then they go into an audit. The Synopsys Black Duck Audit Database represents open source activity from over 20,000 sources worldwide. Their 2020 report, the fifth of their series, described their 2019 study of the audit findings from 1,253 commercial code bases in 17 industries. This is a reasonably comprehensive report. By code base, they mean the source code and libraries that underlie an application, service, or library. Their 2020 findings included the following. 82% of the open source components found were out of date, unpatched, or not well supported. 99% of code bases audited contained open source components. 99%. Open source made up 70% of the audited code bases, which doubled in 5 years. 75% of code bases contained vulnerabilities, up from 60% in 2018, and 49% contained high-risk vulnerabilities. Heartbleed, anybody? An average of 82 vulnerabilities were identified per code base. That's 1,253 commercial code bases in 17 industries. 82 vulnerabilities per code base, on average. The most frequent languages found were JavaScript, C++, Shell, C, Python, Java, TypeScript, C#, Perl, and Ruby. The top 10 open source components found in order of occurrences were jQuery, Bootstrap, FontAwesome, Lodash, jQuery _stay, inherits, isArray, Vision Media, and Minimatch. isArray. What is this? Is such fucking bullshit. Is number? Is code? Is true? Like what? There is more recent data on the extent of the OSS problem from their 2021 study. Their 2022 report, the sixth of their series, described their 2021 study of the audit findings from 2,409 commercial code bases in 17 industries. They showed that OSS remains ubiquitous and pervasive. When they examined the percentage of the code bases in the x-axis below, which was OSS by industry, they were able to show the following. And so this is very similar to the data we already went. That's why I went over here. So this is synopsis, which is like a similar type of well, it's exactly the same. It's synopsis OSS, right? So that's why I went over this one first. They were able to show the extent to which organizations are still struggling to track and manage their OSS. 88% utilized components that were not in the latest version, etc., etc. We went over that. And so these are the ones, percentage of code bases with unpatched high severity vulnerabilities. We already went over that. We even went over some of the types of vulnerabilities. We discussed that already. Total known vulnerabilities by vendor in January 2019. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let this brew. I'm going to zoom right the fuck. We're going to get nice and tight. We're going to get intimate with this shit. We're going to lay in the same bed. We're going to stroke it and pet this shit, okay? I want you all to have a nice, good look at this chart. Total known vulnerabilities by vendor in January 2019. I'm going to have a nice sip of my coffee here because my throat's getting a little parched. You just enjoy this chart. I want you to remember that next time you hear da-na-na-na. Known vulnerability by weakness type. I just want you to have a look at this. This is 2019. Improper restriction of operations within the bounds of a memory buffer. Followed by cross-site scripting. This is junior developer level shit. Currently, open source software platforms include GitHub, etc., etc. My man is just sipping coffee. Thanks. Okay, the quality of these software components is empirically unknown and therefore might potentially introduce flaws that compromise success. Each programming language has a unique structural flaw which might lead a developer into creating a flaw. For example, low-level languages like assembly, C, or C++ are vulnerable to buffer overflow, which hackers can exploit to write malicious code to adjacent memory once buffer capacity is full. Another common vulnerability found in languages like Squeal, JavaScript, and PHP is code injection, where hackers exploit flaws in data processing that cause user input to be interpreted as system commands or include malicious script in uploaded files. A good resource for identifying language-specific problems is the Software Bug Framework Report, which includes a taxonomic hierarchy of weaknesses that applies to all languages. Boy, oh motherfucking boy, are we going over that one. I'm not going to do it in this particular stream because that is more I want to bring that into more of like the developer experience one where the type of language has an impact on the kinds of flaws that are created, which I think I can do like a kind of like a correlative tie-in to the kinds of issues that negatively impact developer experience, because there are actual scientific studies on this, even though it's a bit subjective. And I want to tie in what the weaknesses of these languages as part of this report is. Let me just make sure that I also have this one. I want to set a reminder. Make sure. Okay. It contains specific suggestions to avoid weaknesses, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Some practical advice. So obviously, don't be a stupid piece of shit. Technical debt. Technical debt accumulates when decision makers go for a short-term solution to a software development problem instead of a more exhaustive long-term solution, and this comes with substantial, initially hidden costs that organizations must pay later. And this This really grinds my fucking gears, because people who say, yeah, but look at how fast we made money, it's the way the market is, etc., etc. Listen here, you stupid motherfucker. If you're a business that wants to make money, what are you going to do? I'm going to give you choice A. You can either take on the fact that you're going to incur some technical debt, pay for it now, make more money in the long run, or you're going to make less money because you're going to get there faster. You want to make money? Which one's more important to you? And of course, the answer is whatever gets me the right amount of money the quickest. It doesn't actually matter that there's like a threshold where if you make enough money, you don't give a fuck what happens and how you got there, or how shitty how shitty of a road you took to get there, and how much technical. That's someone else's problem, because you're going to sell your company or cash that paycheck. Someone else is going to deal with your technical debt. This is like peak complacency or I don't give a shitness. And it's one of the most egregious ways I can think of to look at the industry in general. If you want to make money and you want to have your customers be satisfied with your product, be very happy with your product, and you want your developers to have the warm and fuzzies, this is a good way to do it. And unfortunately means that you have to bite a bullet up front in order to make a mountain of gold down the line. But nope, there's enough money going around where people can just walk off at a certain point and go, not my problem anymore. Fuck all of you. Technical debt is also a measure of a company's burden that stems from aging and inflexible IT systems. In one McKinsey survey, 87% of global CIOs said the complexity of their existing systems prevents them from investing in the next generation of services. Global CIOs say that their total technical debt is between 20% and 40% of their total value of their technology estate before depreciation. I want to read that again. Global CIOs say that their total technical debt is between 20% and 40% of the total value of their technology estate before depreciation. Software AG says that 78% of organizations surveyed have accrued more technical debt in the past year than in previous years, but only 42% of companies feel that they have the ability to even assess all of their technical debt. Signs that an organization is overburdened with technical debt include a backlog of project requests from business units. Contractors and consultants are being hired to fix or maintain existing systems. A rise in support cases about core functionality that is impaired. The IT department has decided not to upgrade software the company continues to use, when a relatively simple request for a modification turns into a major project. The amount of debt to be serviced limits the choices in using the IT budget. The amount of unplanned work noticeably grows. There are two parts of technical debt. Principal refers to the cost of refactoring or modifying software artifacts so that they reach a desired level of maintainability and evolvability. Interest is the extra effort that developers will spend when making those changes because of the existence of technical debt, which accumulates over time as software becomes more brittle. Every minute spent on not quite right code adds interest on the debt. Now, if you take in the fact that people are pulling in 99% of their code bases based on open source systems, a vast majority of which are not built very well to begin with, on top of a vast majority of internal developers not caring about the code they produce or just saying it's good enough as they get the warm fuzzies, cashing their paycheck and going home, you have to consider how much debt actually is incurred by technical debt because of this. And I would say it's currently unquantifiable, but it's probably in the trillions. Technical debt is the result of a suboptimal construct that is expedient in the short term, but sets up a technical context that can make a future change costlier or even impossible. And I would argue would also be if you take in even very popular frameworks like React, but not only React, and they come with their own baggage, and you are dependent on an external party to fix that baggage, as you can see happens in open source software, where vulnerabilities go unchecked for years, if not longer, right? And so your ability to be able to change technical debt or tackle technical debt essentially goes out the window, because you're incurring the technical debt not only of the shit you're producing, but also of whatever else is being produced by the thing you're pulling in, whether it's closed source, open source, massive company, small company, one developer, many developers, doesn't matter. Much of the current debt that exists today was created by quick and dirty development techniques, agile without software engineering principle or discipline. In any case, all or part of this debt may need repayment. When or if to repay involves difficult trade-offs. There are many types of technical debt, such as requirements, architectural, code, testing, and operational. Technical debt can be injected at any stage of software development, spreading across other phases and system parts and causing various problems. So technical debt, like the CISQ, is important because it facilitates the discourse between engineers and management on how to best invest limited resources on corrective maintenance and code improvement versus adding new features and functionality. The tipping point is reached, for example, when the cost of new features, bug fixes, and maintenance exceed the project budget, causing them to reach a state of technical bankruptcy. The rough cost of technical debt in 2022. According to Stripe, the number of hours an average developer at a company spends on addressing technical debt is 13.5 out of 41.1, or 33%. A 2019 Scandinavian study revealed that developers waste on average 23% of their time due to technical debt. That was at the beginning in the overview. In our 2020 report, we estimated that the technical debt principal in the US is to be about $1.3 trillion. $1.3 trillion, which would increase to $1.52 trillion in 2022 due to inflation arose. Do you want to guess what the inflation rate would be today? Listen to the next sentence. This figure is roughly equal to the total dollars spent on the entire US IT labor base in 2022. You can literally take the technical debt in the US in whole and hire every single developer in 2022 that ever generated a piece of code and pay them twice. We have no good estimates yet on the accumulating interest. How could you do that? Nonetheless, we recognize that technical debt is a huge problem, which will get much worse if we do nothing at all. The potential of managing technical debt is seen in the step size research, which revealed that organizations who actively manage tech debt will ship at least 50% faster. Holy motherfucking shit, Batman! If you focus on your code quality, you can actually ship faster. And that shit that gives you the warm and fuzzies because you added complexity, you can get that warm and fuzzy feeling by fixing the shit you created in the first place and make more money off of it. Pikachu shock. Progress in the measurement of software technical debt. One of the main problems in dealing with technical debt has been the lack of a way to measure that debt. So they came up with a system. They have code quality measures. I will say that the scientific research, there is actually quite a few scientific papers I found that give you frameworks and even like software you can use or things you can run on like a browser that will kind of detect technical debt, code smells, performance issues, things like that. So there are actually quite a few frameworks that are scientifically studied to be somewhat effective, at least. There are almost next to none which actually apply them. So they talk about automated tools like SonarQube and stuff like that. I've used SonarQube, and there's An empirical study of refactoring challenges and benefits at Microsoft. Developers reported the following refactoring gains. So in order to tackle technical debt, that typically comes with a refactoring. Improved maintainability, 30%. Improved readability, 43%. This is an increase, like an improvement. 27% fewer bugs, 12% improved performance, 12% reduction of code size, 18% reduction of duplicate code, 12% improved testability, 27% improved extensibility and easier to add new feature, 19% improved modularity, and 5% reduced time to market. Would this not give you the warm and fuzzies, the same as I get to do React compile and it feels good doing it? Software quality standards. So they go over some like rubrics on what would be considered good software quality. And they again, software quality has scientific definitions, and they're generally like reasonably studied. This does a pretty good job of summarizing them. So it's a combination of the following aspects: conformance to requirements. The requirements are clearly stated and the product must conform to it. Any deviation from the requirements is regarded as a defect. A good quality product contains fewer defects. Fitness for use or repurpose. Fit to user expectation. Meets users' needs. A good quality product provides better user satisfaction. Meeting standards. In many industries and organizations, certain external and internal standards must be complied with. A good quality product conforms to required standards of quality like the ISO, which can be a pain in the butt, or SPICE CMMI. If you're in e-commerce, you've probably dealt with some of this. Underlying aspects which include structural qualities such as complexity, aesthetic quality, appearance, ease of use, etc. Every application or business domain faces a specific set of software quality issues, and software quality must be defined accordingly. A definition fashioned from the above aspects and or applicable standards should be created for each project. Okay, I'm going to take a break because Bezos wants his ads on Twitch. So let me run the stupid ads. Okay, and I'll have something. I'll catch up on chat for a little bit. Or like only halfway down. Quite a few frameworks for assessing tech debt is nice, but someone has to use them. Yeah, exactly. Damn it, Axe is gone. Thank you, Axe. Yeah, Omni, if tech debt is 20 to 40% and bugs only require 20% extra work, then something's not right. You're right. UNDG111, you won't demonize it as much as me. I'll demonize it all I want, all right? Navajo, good to see you. Vancouver, good to see you. Sergeant, good to see you. Lopta, good to see you. I don't know who else is watching, but I'll just say hi while I wait for the ads to be over. There's like a minute and a half left. I don't think I saw anybody on anything else. No, it doesn't look like it. It's fine. I hope you guys are all having a good night, good day, whatever it is. We're halfway through this. I'll finish this one and then I'll briefly cover a few more and then we'll call it for this one. I might even have to do a 2-part on this because there's just so much data to go through, and just the concept that things are okay is just mind-boggling to me. Things are not okay. And it would make sense in my eyes. This is not part of the recorded stream because I'm just waiting for ads, but it would make sense in my eyes that if we have these many issues in the industry, they come from delinquencies, at the very least in software. And that if you're going to make the claim that things have never been better in terms of like our ability to do stuff and our tooling and whatnot, then I would expect to see an improvement in these things, not a negative, like a decrease or like a negative improvement, if you will. But all I see is just things are getting worse. Things are getting worse. How do these things get worse? Well, it must mean that there are more vulnerabilities out in the open, more are being created, more are being let go of. Not enough time and attention is being focused on the right things. We overcomplexify whatever it is that we overcomplexify. We focus too much on developer experience or making managers or executives feel good or chasing that exit or whatever it is that we're focusing on. It's not the right stuff. If it was the right stuff, we wouldn't be seeing these numbers this way. Okay, ads are over. On Twitch, so I'm going to keep going. So they talk about emerging trends of defining software quality. So, I mean, that's a good thing because the more that we have definitions, the more that we're able to the more that we're able to identify them and track them. So that is a good thing, that the definitions and ways of structuring what issues there exist are increasing. So that is good. Scanning code has increased. We've gone over that. That is also a good thing. It's just that not enough of it is being acted upon for any number of reasons. And furthermore, the fact that you're scanning code that has a problem with it means that a problem was created in the first place. Otherwise, there would be nothing to scan. And so where does that come in? Understanding, finding, and fixing deficiencies. So they do say that organizations incorporating automated quality analysis and DevOps practices will observe improved quality through the improved discovery of deficiencies by integrating analysis as well as monitoring tools and their development and deployment environments. This, I think, is absolutely true. And I think the problem is that it's overwhelming for anybody to go and sort through this by hand. So of course you're going to have automated tools to help you do this. There are definitely bugs which can be defined even academically or scientifically, and then you can build a tool that goes and determines that it exists or it doesn't exist, tell you about it, and then give you a chance to determine the high risk ones and go tackle them. The issue is that you actually have to go tackle them. The other issue is that we have to decrease the rate upon which they exist. So CIST is one. It's the Crash 2020 report, which I did look at, and I might include in the developer experience report, in the developer experience stream that I'll do. I'm not sure, but there are some findings. Based on calculating the densities of critical weaknesses in applications, it revealed that the size of an application had negligible to no relation to its structural quality. Densities of critical weaknesses for security were higher than those for robustness and changeability. The lowest densities were observed for transferability, equivalent to understandability. Of course, this makes total sense. Industry segment is of lesser importance than other factors, but this only applies to Java enterprise applications, for which telecom, software ISVs, and IT consulting had the highest densities of critical robustness, security, and changeability weakness. Most industries showed wide variability in critical weakness densities and numerous extreme outlier scores. Security was the area where the mean densities of critical weaknesses and variability of scores were highest. The factors that most affect quality attributes like robustness, security, or changeability appear most likely to be specific to the application, the development team, and the specific conditions in the development environment. So then they have recommendations such as continually checking and team structural quality and things like that. And then a flow chart, just in case you have to, present this at an executive board meeting. Here's a flow chart of how you're going to tackle your technical debt. And then potential time savings. Now, this one in particular is kind of hard to put numbers to. I suppose that what you can do is similar to what we read before, where if you make refactors with a Microsoft study, how much does it impact you? So in a positive way or in a negative way. And the Microsoft report showed that refactoring, dealing with technical debt, simplifying code, not making it more complex, simplifying code, removing dead code, all that stuff had really, really powerful positive impacts. So this is probably not too far off the mark in terms of time savings. There's bug hunter programs. That's good. There's automated program repairs. But again, I don't think that this is the end all be all. I think it's a good tool. But the developer experience, at least one of the studies, like I said before, shows that developers can't even trust the automated tools that are telling them to do something or look at something, and it causes a negative impact on their developer experience. So even these tools have a limitation because developers will go into it and look at something and go, well, this isn't what I expected it to be. And so it causes frustration. So I do think these tools are needed, but you can't just rely, they're like crutches. They're like they're leaned on too much, like everything else that's apparently happening in the IT industry. You take something that's supposed to solve all your problems, and then you lean on it to the ends of the earth as if your life depends on it and nothing else, and you don't look into what's actually going on. And then when you finally do, you realize what a shit show it is, and you're so shocked by it that it causes you to become depressed and nihilistic, and off you go wondering about what you're doing with your life. And then AI and machine learning, I just don't care. I don't care about it. It's a 2022 report. It's a little bit early for it anyways. So then they essentially go over and cover the same stuff that they covered before. And they go over the job market shortage, which I think is just like, it's very different now. I don't think it's quite the same as 2022. So they're going to do a report for 2024. It's not out yet as far as I know. So, and, so I don't have it, but I will definitely be looking for it. I'm hoping it comes out in November like this one did. And I guess I'll make a call here. I don't think these numbers are going to be better, and I don't think that they're going to show that developers are feeling the warm and fuzzies about their complex build tools and frameworks and libraries and languages and whatever. And as a result, these numbers, particularly in terms of cybersecurity, but also technical debt and structural issues with code and whatever, I don't think these things are going to get any better. That would be my guess. And then they go into stuff I don't even think I can say it because I might get immediately dinged if I say it. And then these are kind of like summarizations. Is there anything else in here? I think that's it. Yeah. So it's